Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justice, and today to kick off Pride Month, I have compiled a list of 35 LGBT horror movies to go through and rank and do a tier list on. I also want to include in here on this list that I'm not going to have every gay film ever created in here. In fact, I think a lot of these are probably going to lean more into the category of being about gay men, since that's what I am. But I did try to sprinkle other things in here for other ends of the spectrum to give some solid recommendations, and then of course some recommendations for the lesser things in this world that you probably don't need to see. But there is plenty of really good queer cinema out there. Some of the representation doesn't exactly hold up the best, unfortunately, but I still find some of those movies entertaining, and we'll be talking about them. Don't you worry about that. But to go section by section on this tier list, starting from the worst, the bottom category is Should They Suffer?
Clap if you think she should suffer.
This is for the films that are bottom of the barrel bad. I wouldn't wish for my worst enemy to have to watch any of these movies. The next section is going to be Sashay Away.
Now, sashay away.
Which, if the movie falls in this category, it's still not a good movie. I just need it out of sight, out of mind, but it isn't the worst thing ever, but still not a good movie. And then for our midpoint of the list is It Feels Like a Movie.
You know, my favorite thing about the movie is it feels like a movie.
These are the movies that are rather inoffensive, if only just forgettable, and I feel like a decent chunk of movies are probably going to fall into this category. For the next section, it's going to be Shantae, You Stay, and these are the ones that I think are overall good movies. They might have a couple flaws here and there, but for the most part, I really enjoy them, and I think they are a good time. And then, of course, the top category is going to be queer cinema, and in retrospect, maybe I should have put Scream Queen or something. That would have been way more fitting for this category. This top category is for the best of the best that LGBT horror has to offer. But of course, let's get my rambling out of the way. We have 35 movies to go through, and to start up the list, and like I said, this is in no particular order, the first thing popping up is Sleepaway Camp, and I feel like this is a prime example of not good representation, but like a fun as fuck movie. And I guess spoilers for Sleepaway Camp if you haven't seen it. Very, very much a like transphobic movie, but that ending is so freaking iconic. The stupid twist ending with Angela, where the entire movie essentially is just be scared of trans people. The 80s were a different time, man. But this movie is very much your typical 80s summer camp slasher, very cheesy, very campy, shoestring budget with many questionable acting choices throughout. One of the things that I always enjoy going back to this movie is the weird 80s fashion in it. You see men in crop tops and short shorts throughout the movie, and I don't know, I just feel like it adds to the gay vibes of it. But if I were to be putting it on this list, we are probably going to say that I'm thinking queer cinema. I feel like Sleepaway Camp has earned its mark on the LGBT genre. It may not be the best representation, but I feel like in the horror community, people know Sleepaway Camp is very much a classic of the genre. But coming up next, we are going to be talking about the 2022 film Bodies, 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 which this film follows a group of friends who are staying in their mansion during a hurricane when one by one they all start dying. It's a horror comedy that is very satirical towards Nepo baby, rich Gen Zers, and I think it is freaking hilarious. I love this movie. It was one of my favorite films that came out in 2022, which was admittedly a really stacked year for horror, so the fact that this stuck out is a huge highlight. But the main character in this film is lesbian, and her girlfriend are kind of going through the night, and she's kind of the outlier of the group, where you have like all these narcissistic kids who don't really understand anything. You have her to kind of like balance everything out. This movie, though, I think is a really fun one. I highly recommend it. I don't want to seem like I'm being too nice and positive, but again, I'm going to put this in queer cinema because that movie is so good, and if you haven't seen it, go in blind. Just a really fun whodunit movie, and I won't say any more for fear of spoilers if you haven't seen that film yet. But coming up next, and this is a polar opposite of the last two I've talked, is They/Them. And I don't even have to say much. This is going into Should They Suffer, and in fact, They/Them should suffer a lot. I absolutely hate this movie, and it's so frustrating to me because I had such high hopes for it when I heard it was coming out, and I heard the whole concept of a conversion therapy camp being turned into a slasher flick. I thought it sounded like a genuinely interesting concept. I even think the play on words for the title They/Them is admittedly a really, really cool title, but this movie is such a joke, and it doesn't know what it wants to be. At points it's trying to be serious, and then other points it's being way too camp. The kills are mostly done off screen, and I feel like that's such a cardinal sin if you are a slasher movie, is having off-screen kills. What are you doing at that point, man? And then to top it all off, too, they have a weird musical number in the middle of the movie, Too Fucking Perfect by Pink, for reasons I don't really think anybody asked for that, and it didn't really make sense for the movie to suddenly just become Glee partway through. So a very tonally inconsistent movie, a very messy movie, and I don't really have anything positive I can say about it. It's a good idea and like a good concept for a film, but it was wasted on straight to streaming garbage at the end of the day. But coming up next on the list, and this is a short film, is I Was a Teenage Werebear, and I am going to put this in It Feels Like a Movie. This is in the, I believe, the Chillerama anthology film. I haven't seen the other short films in this movie, but I saw this short. Essentially, it's like this like 50s musical parody, and you have this teenager who's at the beach with his girlfriend when there's a group of bikers that are like big and bad and scary, and they're all werebears, and they have like repressed homosexuality or whatever, you know, the typical thing in a queer movie, repressed homosexuality. You're gonna hear me say that a lot in this freaking video. But this film, it's only like 30 minutes. It's inoffensive. I didn't really have a problem with it one way or the other. It was a good enough time. I don't know, I was entertained by it, but throughout the film, you're pretty much just following this teenager essentially falling in love with this werebear and then becoming one himself and like fighting off the urges of it. So very cheap, very campy, fun enough watch, and again, inoffensive. So if you watch it, cool. If you have never seen it before and you don't feel the need to watch it, then you're also not really missing much either, honestly. Coming up next on the list is going to be Jennifer's Body, and that, again, we're going to put that in queer cinema because I feel like in recent years it's become like a classic of the 2000s. I think Megan Fox is so fantastic in this movie. Her and Amanda Seyfried, and like their like on-screen like bisexual panic is like so apparent in this movie. Need I say more? But in this film, you have Jennifer, who essentially becomes a succubus and starts killing off the boys in town, and her best friend, played by Amanda Seyfried, is the one that has to try to save the day. It's very much a dark comedy, and a really good one at that, and it's very tongue-in-cheek too, and just full of camp. I think Megan Fox does a fantastic job in this film, and it's probably my favorite performance out of any of her films, honestly, so highly recommend if you somehow have managed to not see this one yet. Coming up next on the list is going to be Ganymede, and again, I'm gonna put this one in should they suffer? I really didn't like this movie, and I didn't think I was going to even when I saw the trailer. I'm really sick in queer horror movies when they have a gay character and they have to fight through their own like suppressed gay feelings, and their internalized homophobia becomes a monster. And again, it's going to be a thing that comes up multiple times in this list, but the way that it turns into a monster, even in this film, I think is just really cheesy. It's riddled with CGI, and it's just a very unoriginal story. And I don't know how else to put it. It just wasn't that good, and I don't really even have that much else to say about it because it's a forgettable movie that did nothing new, and I wasn't very impressed with it, honestly. But coming up next is going to be Midnight Kiss, which is an entry from the now canceled Into the Dark series that was on Hulu. And this film I am going to put into sachet away. I don't hate this movie by any means. It's not that good either, though. I think the only notable thing I can say about it is Lucas Gage is in that film, and he'll come up in a later one that I'll speak more positively on. This film is essentially just a gay slasher, but a very boring and heartless and unentertaining one. Like, I don't think the acting is really a problem. I even enjoy the director Carter Smith. He has other films, in fact, that are going to be on this list, but this one I just don't think was it. And I don't know if it was a studio thing. I don't know if it was like a budget thing, but I just wasn't a fan of this movie. I didn't think the kills were all that memorable. I didn't think any of the characters were all that likable, and I just wasn't a fan of it, and it's such a drag. I mean, the movie's only an hour and 20 minutes, but it feels like it's 2 hours long with how slow the whole thing is. So like I said, like, it's just a really boring movie to me. So like, not the worst of the worst, but like, I really wouldn't recommend it, and like, it can just go away. Coming up next, and this film is also actually going to go into the sachet away section, is going to be Hypochondriac. And in this film, we have our main character who is a potter, and as the film goes on, he starts to go through psychosis, and he struggles to like be able to tell the difference between like reality and like what is happening from like his disturbed mind. And the film is very, very reminiscent to Donnie Darko, but like a way lower budget version of that, and like the queer version of that, I guess. But overall, I wasn't really a fan of it, because if I wanted to watch the Donnie Darko story, I would just watch Donnie Darko, honestly. I really thought this movie was just overall forgettable and not that good. In fact, it's been a couple years since I've seen this movie. It came out the same year as They, Them, ironically, and I wasn't into it. I thought they could have done better on it. Like, it was better than They, Them, but not by much. So forgettable movie. What else can I say? Coming up next, though, is going to be Hellbent, which is yet another gay slasher, and I'm actually going to put this one into Shantae, You Stay, the first one in that category, actually. And the whole reason I'm going to put that one in there that makes it better than Midnight Kiss for me is, I don't know, just the low budget quality of it. It very much felt like your typical like hidden gem 80s horror slasher. I very much enjoyed it. I thought the opening scene was really fun and hot, instead of like having like your straight couple making out in the car and your slasher killer coming to get you. It's a gay couple that's hanging out in their car. I think that opening scene as a standalone would even make a fantastic short film. The only thing that I think is kind of a negative for this movie is all the deaths are essentially beheadings. So spoiler alert, but after like the first two, you very much realize that that's all they're going to be in this entire movie. I thought this film had way more heart. I thought the characters were way more likable, and I thought it was just overall a better time than Midnight Kiss was, whereas I felt Midnight Kiss took itself way, way too seriously. I thought Hellbent did a really good job sticking with its like more campier tone overall. The fact too that it is your first openly gay slasher, and it bills itself as such. I think it deserves plenty of praise. So not a perfect movie, but a pretty decent movie, and I have rewatched it a couple times. But coming up next on the list is, in fact, going to be May, and boy, maybe I'm just being way too nice today, but that's going into queer cinema also. I fucking love May. It is such a good movie. I have so much nostalgia for this movie. I remember seeing it in Blockbuster back in the day on the shelves and thinking it had like the coolest and like creepiest looking poster ever. But essentially, May is an outcast, and the only thing she wants in the world is a friend, even if she ends up having to make said friend herself. I think this is a very weird and like freaky movie, and it like perfectly fits those Halloween vibes. Maybe bad recommend since this is Pride Month and Halloween's months away, but May is a good Halloween flick, need I say more? And if you haven't seen May, I very much implore you to. It's a very good character study, and you very much get into the mind of May, and even though she's like a very disturbed woman, you come out of it very much empathizing with her and feeling bad for her. I think Angela Bettis does a fantastic job in the role. Anna Faris also has a role in this movie, and she plays May's co-worker, her lesbian co-worker who has a crush on her, and her character is such a freak and so campy in this movie. This is very much like a 2000s classic for me, especially for like the B-rated horror genre. So if you haven't seen it, again, check it out. You need to. But coming up next, and this one is actually going to go in the it feels like a movie category, is going to be Spiral. And this film follows a gay couple that move to a new suburb with their adopted daughter, and the neighbors start acting really weird, and they start to worry that maybe they made the wrong move after all. Overall, I thought this movie was rather inoffensive. I was entertained by it as it went along, and as you're watching the story unfold, seeing exactly what the neighbors' motives are and what they're all up to. But overall, it's not that good of a movie. I didn't really like the twist ending at the end, and I just, I don't know, just kind of forgettable. So it kind of just lands in the middle of the list. Not the worst of the worst. I was entertained by it, and what else can I ask for from a movie? But overall, I don't really think I would see myself recommending it to anyone really either. Coming up next on the list is going to be It's a Wonderful Knife, and this one, again, I think we're just going to throw it right here in that it feels like a movie. And this, It's a Wonderful Knife, falls into the category of remaking a non-horror movie idea into a horror movie. So how Happy Death Day was originally Groundhog's Day, or Freaky was originally Freaky Friday. It's a Wonderful Knife is a like horror version of It's a Wonderful Life. And I don't know, I feel like those other movies I mentioned, they utilized the concept way better there than they did this one. I think it could have really worked in this film, but they just completely dropped the ball, and it just was a very forgettable movie overall. I even enjoyed the look of the slasher killer in this, who is supposed to be like a Christmas angel or whatever. I thought they looked cool, but wasted on a rather mediocre and like movie. And I feel like it's pretty obvious how this movie was, because it came out a few years ago and I haven't heard a single person talk about it since. So need I say more, honestly? But coming up next on the list is going to be The Parenting from HBO Max, and this film, I think I'm actually going to just throw right into Shantae, You Stay. I thought it was a decent enough like horror comedy. You have Lisa Kudrow in it, and you have Parker Posey, who are both admittedly really, really funny in this movie, which it's Lisa Kudrow and Parker Posey, need I say more? But the film follows this gay couple who are introducing their parents to each other for the first time. So they have both of their parents come down for this like weekend getaway at a cabin, and then a ghost comes into the house and chaos ensues. It's a fun movie. I had a good time with it. It's nothing that original, but it's a very good popcorn flick that did elicit a few really good laughs out of me. So I would recommend it. I think it's a good enough movie. But on to the next, and we are going to be talking about B and B, and I'm gonna throw this one into Sashay Away. Not the worst of the worst, but It's so freaking boring, and I feel like the concept could have been really good, but it didn't really work out. We're following this gay couple who went to this bed and breakfast, and initially they were turned away by the owners of this bed and breakfast because of them being gay. So then the gay couple sues the owners and then wins the lawsuit and goes back to the bed and breakfast to stay just to prove a point. And then as they are staying there, someone tries to kill them. I think the concept was a really good one. I like the home invasion movie vibes. I just don't think they did a really good job here. The movie just dragged a lot, and I thought the two characters in it were very much not fleshed out. Overall, it just kind of felt like an excuse to make commentary on the wedding cake debacle that had happened around that time period without like making a smartly written movie about it. It just felt too on the nose for me because obviously I think it goes without saying that it is discrimination to turn somebody away just because of their sexuality. I don't care what business you run, like, it shouldn't be allowed. But I just feel like the way they did it here was just entirely way too on the nose, and they could have done a way better job than what they did overall. But coming up next is going to be Heg, and again, I'm going to throw this one into sachet away. This one came out at the tail end of last year. It follows Rowan, who ends up reconnecting with an old friend from back when he was a kid, and she decides that she wants to become like his ultimate fag hag. You have her becoming more and more obsessive with Rowan, and I feel like this movie, it could have been a really good one. I even enjoy some of the more campier moments in it. I mean, this bitch straight up writes him a love song, and they play it on the ending credits of this movie, and it makes me cackle every time because the lyrics are so freaking stupid. But this movie, I just don't think it really knew what it wanted to be. It couldn't really pick a lane of like whether or not it wanted to be like this like serious horror thriller or if it wanted to be like this like campy fun time. And if it would have picked a lane, I feel like I would have ended up enjoying it way more than what I did. It just ended up being yet another like really cheaply made like queer horror film, and those are a dime a dozen, and there are going to be plenty more of those on this list that are even more cheap than that. But coming up next on the list is going to be the next Carter Smith movie, like I promised, and it's another short film. It's Bug Crush, and we'll put that into Shantae, You Stay. And I really enjoyed this one. It's like 30 minutes long, and it follows this boy who develops a crush on this like bad boy kid, and he goes to his house and finds out he's like taking these mysterious drugs, and he ends up taking them, and then a whole bunch of like really bad stuff ends up ensuing. It's a really dark movie, and it goes places that very much are a trigger warning, and I would heavily recommend that, like, if you're sensitive, maybe don't check this one out, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well acted, and I feel like this is a prime example of, like, Carter Smith actually shining, and this is, like, a prelude to his later film, Swallowed, which we will get into later whenever it ends up popping up, so don't you fret. It's only, like, 30 minutes long. You should give it a watch, but coming up next is going to be Devil's Path, and I'm going to put this one in Should They Suffer. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. Hell, I don't even know if anybody's going to know what that movie is. I feel like it's a pretty indie one. But I just don't really like the acting in it. It just felt very cheap and like, ugh. And like, I even think the main characters ends up being so unlikable by the end of this movie. But it probably doesn't help that I haven't really explained anything yet. But you have these men that are at this cruising spot in the woods, and the two of them like decide they're gonna go off in the woods and fuck, when all of a sudden these homophobic guys start hunting them down and trying to attack them in the woods. These two men that end up just running into the woods to hide and get away from these like bigger, scarier men, essentially. And as they are going down the devil's path, they end up uncovering a bunch of secrets along the way that are very horrifying, yada 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 yada. I just was not a fan of this movie. I think the twist ending for the main character especially paints him in such an unfavorable light and just kind of makes the movie like a what did I just watch type experience. So I don't really recommend Devil's Path. It's not the worst thing in this bottom section of the list, so I guess that's something, right? Coming up next is going to be Stranger by the Lake, and this is going straight into queer cinema. This movie is a bona fide classic for a reason. I think it is so freaking good. It's a French film, and the story follows these men that are at this beach that's also a cruising location, and the main character becomes massively infatuated with another man that is on the beach and develops like quite the crush on him. And as the film progresses, he starts to realize that this man might be into some really dark stuff, and that he might actually be murdering people that are at this cruising beach, but his infatuation gets the best of him. And I don't blame him, because Daddy Killer is Daddy Killer for a reason. But this movie is an extremely beautiful one. It's very much a slow burn, so if you're not into that type of thing, then like don't watch this, I guess. But if you're like able to like let the story wrap you up and see where it takes you, I think the payoff by the end is really good. It's a very well shot movie, and there are just so many beautiful people in this film, and I feel like it makes sense to say that because 90% of the time everybody's naked on this beach anyways when they're cruising, and especially the killer dude, like who again, daddy killer. But I highly recommend Stranger by the Lake. I think it is a pretty good movie, but before I ramble more, we'll go on to the next thing. And next up on the list is going to be Queens of the Dead, which was actually directed by George A. Romero's daughter, which fitting, seeing as he was the one that created the modern day zombie. It's nice to see his daughter continuing the mantle. This film is a horror comedy that takes place as this zombie apocalypse is breaking out, and we are following all these drag queens at this gay bar as they try to survive the hordes of zombies coming after them. I recently saw this one for the first time like a week or two ago, and I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a really good job on it, and I very much look forward to see what else that she can do in the future. I thought this was a very good debut film and very funny, very well acted. And overall, I just thought so many of the characters were extremely likable. Even like the mean gays would elicit a chuckle out of me here and there. And I feel like that's such a hard thing for me to enjoy anymore, because I feel like the mean gay trope is so overdone in movies nowadays. I thought they did a good job with it here though, and I very much enjoyed this film. So if you have Shudder, then I highly recommend this movie. But like Queens of the Dead, I don't think is the top slot, but it's a really good movie, and I do recommend that you check it out. But coming up next on the list is going to be Hostel. You may be surprised to see Hostel in here, and this is the first of a couple that I have thrown in here that are entirely in here just because of subtext alone. And I very much enjoy Hostel. If you haven't seen it and haven't heard of it, which I'd be surprised if you haven't, the film follows a couple of friends that go off to, I believe it's a Swedish country, and they are staying in a hostel when the Americans and like tourists and such are being kidnapped and sold to wealthy people to be tortured. And this is hands down my favorite Eli Roth movie. I'm not a big fan of his works, but I really do enjoy this movie, and I feel like this movie is so much smarter than it's given credit for. I think the writing in it is fantastic, and you very much see it with the subtext of the main character's best friend in the film. You never hear them outright say he's gay, but due to like the direction of the movie, you can very much tell like, yeah, this boy be a homo. You have this one scene where the main character and his friend are fucking girls in this room, and they are in the same room together, separate beds, but same room. But his friend's eyes keep lingering on him for way too long, and it's like very obvious that he's checking him out and like wishing he was inside his buddy and not the chick that's in front of him. So I feel like this like earns its place on this list, just saying. But I very much enjoy Hostel. Like I said, it's my favorite Eli Roth movie. Do I think it belongs in the queer cinema selection? Probably not, because it is essentially just a side character that I really enjoy, but I want to give praise where it's due, even for like subtext, because sometimes subtext I find to be annoying if it's not too obvious, and I feel like this subtext is pretty obvious. It might as well just be text, honestly. But coming up next on the list is going to be the last Carter Smith movie, and it is going to be Swallowed. And I actually really enjoyed this movie, and maybe, I'm having a debate with myself, because should I put it in queer cinema or Shantae, you stay? Fuck it, we're gonna be nice. We'll give him a queer cinema selection, because you gotta give some respect to like our gay directors, writers, whatever. But Swallowed very much picks up with the story from Bug Crush, where you have this like mysterious drug that people are taking, and it's like this like slug that makes you like have like all these like euphoric feelings essentially, and you have these two gay friends who are trying to smuggle the drugs, so they swallow all of them, and what ensues is really, really, really freaking gross. This is very much a body horror movie, and though I think most of the stuff isn't shown on screen, it is implied in such a way where it makes you feel like you're seeing way, way more than what you actually are, and I think that Carter Smith does a fantastic job with it. And furthermore, too, you have Mark Patton in this film from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, and I am so glad to see that he is still working. It's really nice to see him in movies, especially knowing his backstory. I really enjoyed Swallowed. I thought it was a good movie, and I would highly recommend it. But coming up next on the list is going to be Horror in the High Desert. This is going to be a situation kind of similar to Hostel, so I'm going to throw it into the Shantae You Stay section. Now, Horror in the High Desert follows Gary, who is this gay hiker who goes missing in the woods, and the entire movie is told through the lens of being a mockumentary. It's set up like this true crime doc, and I very much enjoy it. There's, I believe, 4 entries in this franchise now. I've only seen the first 3, and I very much love this franchise. I am really excited to see where it goes in the future, because like this style of horror has always made me deeply uncomfortable and like still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like there's not much that's able to scare me anymore, but something about these like mockumentary style movies is like able to like get under my skin. So if you can get down with like found footage and like the slow pacing of found footage, then this movie I would highly recommend. But if that's not something that you're really into, then you're not going to enjoy this one. But for me, I think it comfortably lands in like the Shantae You Stay section. But coming up next on the list is going to be The Chaos Brief, yet another found footage movie. I'm going to go ahead and just throw this one into sachet away. The Chaos Brief is about a group of friends who essentially get involved in like an alien abduction plot, essentially. I just, not really that great of a found footage movie. Like, I don't know, I feel like I am way too nice to found footage movies. I feel like some people might even have put this in like the bottom slot, but I was entertained enough by it. I mean, I did finish it. I just don't really have any interest in watching it again. If you've seen one found footage movie, then you've probably already know exactly how The Chaos Brief is going to go. It's nothing special or all that new, so But coming up next is going to be Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, which is actually the oldest film on this list, and I am going to go ahead and throw that into queer cinema. Even though this film is just subtext, I really did enjoy it. You have our 2 main characters, these 2 men who are, of course, you know, just roommates, and they are hosting a dinner party. And wouldn't you know it, they killed a guy. So they hide the guy inside this trunk and have him in the middle of the dinner the entire night just to see if they can get away with it. And this is a really fun, like, experimental movie overall, I would say. The entire movie is shown in, I believe, 3 continuous one takes, and I think that's super cool. And I think that Alfred Hitchcock liked to do a lot of like experimental filmmaking like that. So watching it and like just seeing the camera linger on everyone, just knowing how hard that had to have been to like be able to film and set up, like I have to give massive props to, because you'd have to be extremely well choreographed to like make a one take work, let alone one for that long, because they're going on in like 30 to 40 minute takes. So like good for him, he did a fantastic job with it. But also like, damn, he might as well just said these characters are a couple, because they're roommates, like I was getting at, yet they only have one bedroom in the house with one bed, and the telephone is like right next to their one bed in this apartment. Like, they're a couple. Like like need I say more? They're a couple. But I really enjoy this one. I think the whole like cat and mouse aspect, as you have these two characters that are getting more and more unnerved about whether or not their guests are going to find out about the body, but then also getting exhilarated at the risk of getting caught. It's a very fun movie, and I enjoyed it. And I don't know, there isn't much else I can say about it. It's an Alfred Hitchcock one, so you definitely gotta watch it. Good time. But coming up next on the list is going to be The Judgment, which came out a couple years ago. I believe it's on Here TV now. And it follows these two Egyptian men who go back to Egypt to go see one of their families, and when they are there, he has to recloset himself. So even though his boyfriend is with him, he needs to pretend like it's just his friend, because Egypt is very, very homophobic. And again, just like Ganymede, this is another tale of like your internalized homophobia and fear of coming out, turning into a monster. Not my cup of tea at all, but I'll put it in sachet away, if only because I did enjoy the extra edge of adding in the other culture, and like the Egyptian sets are really, really cool. I enjoy seeing them run around this like essentially desert land with each other. I also like seeing the other culture, and I did think the ending of the film was overall kind of heartwarming. So not an awful movie. I thought it was more memorable than Ganymede, and it had more sequences in it that I actually look back on fondly. But again, it's a concept that I'm just kind of over, and I don't really think more often than not it's done to that good of effect, honestly. Coming up next is going to be The Perfection, and we are going to just throw that straight up here into queer cinema. The Perfection, though, is a Netflix horror movie. It came out a few years ago now, and I know that a lot of people say it's really problematic, and like, I guess I can see it, but like, maybe don't overthink it too much, because I just thought it was a really good movie, very well written, and like just a freaking trip to go down. And I don't even really know what to say or even explain about this movie without spoiling the whole damn thing if you haven't seen it. But essentially, it follows these two celloists that have a history with each other, and once they cross paths again, both their lives are going to be changed forever. And I don't know how to go into any more detail than that, because if I did, then like I would be ruining the whole movie for you guys. And I implore you to go check this one out, especially if you enjoy movies that have the big twists in them. This one has multiple of those in it. And then on top of it too, if you like a good gory movie, there are some really, really gory scenes in this film. So very much a top tier queer movie for me. I enjoy The Perfection, and I think it's some of the best that the genre has to offer. But coming up next on the list is going to be Companion, and if I were going to be ranking this on a best movies list, I would probably put this one in queer cinema as well. But because the gay characters in it are more or less side characters, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it into Shantae You Say. But Companion is a fantastic movie. It, again, is one where I don't really want to get into the plot because there is so many good twists in this film, but to try to give like a very vague plot synopsis, you have this main couple who are staying at like this house in the woods for the weekend, and as they are staying at this house, their relationship is very much brought into question as you get to see like their unhealthy dynamics blossom, yada yada yada. I don't know if that even really explains the movie at all, honestly, but again, if you have not seen this one yet, somehow I highly recommend it. It's really good, and the gay couple in this one is absolutely adorable. This is the other film I was talking about with Lucas Gage. I thought he did a really good job in this movie, and he's such a golden retriever in this film. I honestly think that it was one of the best horror films that came out last year, and I can't scream enough praise to it. It's at this point while editing the video that I realized I forgot to put Knock at the Cabin in this tier list. Since it's not going to appear on the screen what tier it's going to be, I'm just going to say it, and maybe this is a hot take, but I'm throwing Knock at the Cabin straight into Sashay Away. This movie I was so excited for when it came out. I love M. Night Shyamalan, and the book that this movie was inspired off of, or supposed to be based on anyways, The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Fantastic book. I loved it. I thought they did such a fantastic job on it, and I could not have been more excited for the movie. And I would say half this movie is that book, but then you have this huge twist that happens in the book, and that twist happens in this movie, but it goes a completely different direction. And for me, I think the film ends up turning into like a very typical bury your gaze type movie. It was well acted, and like it had really good direction to it. I mean, it's M. Night Shyamalan, so like what else could you expect? This movie just ended up being a total dud for me, and I couldn't really handle the ending at all. So yeah, it's gonna land in this slot. So sorry for any M. Night fans or fans of this movie, but I really did not like it. But coming up next on the list is going to be Socket. We're just gonna throw that straight into Should They Suffer? Because this movie is essentially just a step away from being a gay porno. Even when you're looking at cover art for this movie, it doesn't look like the cover art for a movie. It looks like the cover art for an adult movie. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's extremely low budget, which also doesn't help with the fact that it just feels like it's trying to be porn. And also on top of it too, like all the men in it are extremely naked, which yes, you see that in other movies, but because the budget is so low in this one, it just makes it feel like an adult movie. But the whole idea of this film is there is these groups of people that are in this support group that have like all been like electrocuted in some way, shape, or form, and they start chasing a high from it. And eventually it turns into them like essentially doing surgery on like their wrists, where they put a like plug-in like outlet plug-in into their wrist that can like pop in and out so that they can like plug it into the wall and like zap themselves because like it makes them horny and turns them on. So like it's a body horror movie that's like very much wrapped up in like sex and all that. Like it's just But coming up next on the list is going to be Rapture in Blue, and I am going to go ahead and throw this one into Shantae, You Stay. I thought this movie was a decent enough time. It's a really short one too, running only at like 45 minutes. So if you wanted a really quick watch, then like I'd recommend this one. The story follows this teenage boy though, who has another teenage boy that moves into the house down the street from him that used to be his childhood home. And as the movie goes on, it turns into the main character exploring his sexuality, but it does it in like this very like mystical, and like the best way I can describe it is like this like mystical horror 80s type energy. It's very out there and like a very weird movie. I don't even really know how to put into words what this movie is, but there's so many shots in it that are very gorgeously done, and I really enjoyed this one. And I don't know, I haven't heard that many people talk about it, honestly, so if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. But coming up next is going to be Seed of Chucky, and I am going to go right back up to the top and piss off any Chucky fans that hate this movie, because queer cinema at its finest. Don't you be disrespecting Glenn and Glenda, our gender fluid icons. This is the fifth entry in the Child's Play franchise. Chucky and Tiffany have their child, and they wreak havoc through Jennifer Tilly's life. This is such a weird and like campy film, and like one of those ones where I feel like you have to see it to believe it, and like just a very strange movie overall. And I love every second of it. This is like when Chucky becomes like straight comedy and horror becomes second, which I would be upset if the entire Chucky franchise became that, but because this is like a standalone film that did that, no problem with it. I really enjoy it, and I love that Chucky is constantly like swapping genres and doing its own things and like willing to take risks, and I think it worked perfectly here. And I am really glad to see that like this film has developed a cult following, because I'm very nostalgic for this movie. When I was a kid, we had it on DVD. It was the only Chucky movie we had on DVD, in fact, and I loved it so much. Probably shouldn't have been watching it as a kid, especially with like the weird opening CGI sequence with Chucky's spunk. Like, weird movie, weird fucking movie. Do I like it though? Yeah, very much so. But coming up next on the list is going to be October Moon, and I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're gonna be nice to October Moon, actually. Or no, we're not. I'm gonna throw it here. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this film before or not. October Moon is essentially about this gay couple, and one of the partners ends up having a man who is in the closet who becomes obsessed with him, and his obsession leads to really, really dark consequences that affect the couple and their friends and like partners and stuff. And I don't know how else to say it. It's very soap opera-y, and I think if this film had a higher budget, I would absolutely love it. There's even a sequel to it that picks up with all the chaos that had happened from the first film into the second one, called November Sun. And even that one, I feel the same way, extremely low budget, and if it had been like a higher budget, I think I would have been into it way more. But the entire movie just looks so freaking cheap, which I hate to say that, because I understand that like you can only do so much when you don't have enough money to make a movie, but that doesn't make it any harder to watch, because there really isn't anything in the film that looks good. The camera quality is like super grainy across the board, and overall, like, there's even acting in it that is very questionable. Like, I think the straight guy's girlfriend in this film very much cannot act. I think that her performances are so like either over the top or just monotone, and there's like not much in between. And I thought she did a little bit better in November Sun, but not by much. This is very much like a weird case where I wish I could say better things about this movie, because you do have like Barbara Crampton in it, who's like an icon in the horror genre. In fact, she's in both entries in this franchise, but I need to like be legit, and like if I'm gonna be recommending movies, I wouldn't recommend you October Moon, because it's just such an ugly movie to look at. And I hope the director, like in other films that he's had, that he was able to get like somewhat of a better budget, because I do think he is a good storyteller. I thought the story was decent enough. I enjoyed the soap opera aspects. I mean, heck, I did watch both movies after all, but I don't have any plan to rewatch either of them either, because acting and direction, like, it just it took me out, man. So maybe he should stick to the writing room, but hey, maybe he's improved since then. But coming up next on the list is going to be Rift, and it is an Icelandic horror movie. And this film follows two gay men who are staying in a home on the countryside, in a haunted house, essentially, as they are looking back at their broken relationship. And this movie is such a beautiful movie, and I feel like I've been way too nice this entire video, but fuck it, we're gonna keep up the roll. Rift is going into queer cinema. It is such a beautiful movie, and seeing the relationship between these two characters who had like once shared a love is really, really interesting. And I think that both characters are extremely likable in this film, and as the story goes on, it's super heartbreaking as you have like different revelations that are brought up between the two of things that like neither of them ever knew about each other. And the ultimate twist ending too, it just will leave you shattered. I cried a little bit because I'm a little bitch sometimes and I'm not afraid to admit it. But the ending of this film I thought was just so beautifully done, and I very much enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. Again, I think this is another one that might be on Shudder, and if it's not, how dare you, Shudder, for taking off this like beautiful and like perfect movie. Top slot, maybe I'm being too nice, but I don't care. This is my list. Go make your own if you don't like it. Coming up next is going to be the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that one is going to also go into queer cinema immediately. And the Rocky Horror Picture Show is a horror comedy musical that follows Brad and Janet, who have just gotten married, and their car ends up breaking down, and they end up at Frankenfurter's estate for the night, and their sexualities end up being brought to the surface, and they are left with like this bisexual panic, essentially. And I feel like Rocky Horror Picture Show is the weirdest movie to describe to anybody when you want to discuss the plot of it. I feel like it's one of those things where you just kind of have to see it to believe it. But Rocky Horror Picture Show is such an iconic movie. There are so many musical numbers in it that I absolutely adore. I think Touch Me is such a fantastic job. I love Susan Sarandon's performance during that whole sequence, and like Let's Do the Time Warp Again, Sweet Transvestite, for obvious picks for obvious reasons. I also think Tim Curry is so captivating on screen as Frankenfurter, and there isn't much else I can say other than that. It's a very fantastic movie, and my God, I need to go see it live before I die, because that is one thing I have yet to do, and I really want to see a live performance for this show because I've heard how crazy people get at those performances, and I would be all over that. But coming up next on the list is going to be Knife and Heart. This might be a hot take, but I'm gonna throw it into Shantae You Stay. I enjoyed it, but also it wasn't my favorite. But the film is a French film, and it follows these porn actors and directors who are being hunted down by a killer. It's very much a giallo style movie with like a lot of the bright colors and like how the kills are dispatched of. If you've seen a giallo, you very much would understand what I'm saying about this movie. It's a very gorgeous one, but the big downside for me is I'm not a big fan of many of the characters in it. I just don't think they're very memorable overall for me anyways. So very pretty movie, but like the characters didn't really do it for me, but still a good enough time, and I do know that a lot of people like it. So if you like foreign movies, I do think you should check that one out. It just isn't the cock of the block for me, for lack of a better term. But the very last movie on this list, and of course this is like queer history at its finest for the horror genre, and that is going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. And this is going boom, straight up into queer cinema, cap it off up there. But Nightmare on Elm Street 2, it follows Jesse, who is being plagued by nightmares of Freddy Krueger, who wants to possess him. And this movie is so freaking gay. I did an entire review on this film for my Nightmare series, which I'm still actually covering right now, so shameless self-promotion there. So if you want more in-depth thoughts I have for this film, you should definitely go check out that review. But overall, like, this movie I feel like very much deserves its place here because it's one of those examples like the other ones that I threw on here for subtext anyways, where the subtext essentially just passes being subtext and is just text. I mean, in all the other Nightmare movies, Freddy is trying to kill his victim, yet the one time that he has a teenage boy that's like the main thing in his sights, he wants his body and doesn't want to just kill him. I mean, fuck man, if that's not gay, I don't know what is. With the fact that like out of like our big horror franchises that this is the only one that has like the gay entry in the franchise. I feel like it's queer history on its own. I think Mark Patton does such a fantastic job in the role. I really wish this movie hadn't been black sheeped from the franchise. I think many of the kills in this movie are extremely memorable. Even Freddy's death at the end of the movie is one of the more gnarly ones with like really good practical effects. I absolutely love this movie. And like, I don't think it's the best Nightmare sequel, but it's definitely one of the better ones in my opinion. That's going to wrap up my list. If there's any movies that I missed, you should drop them down in the comments, because I'm only human. I might have forgot some, or maybe I haven't seen them yet, and I would love to hear more recommendations for queer horror films. I am constantly looking for more, and I feel like constantly we are met with like so much low budget crap. And like, hey, it'd be really cool if I introduced you guys to some things that you have never heard of before, because I tried to pick some things that weren't all the basic things on here to give like some decent recommendations. But if you liked the video, I would very much love if you dropped a like on it and left me a comment. And if you're new to the channel and you want more content in the future just like this, I would love if you click that subscribe button. I cover everything and anything horror on this channel. But with that all out of the way, this has been Justice, and I really hope to catch you guys on the next one. Take care.